Hello and welcome to Cable Plus Property, your number one online educative platform on all issues related to land and landed properties. As you know, my name is Oiza, and at Cable Plus Property, our aim is to ensure that all Nigerians and non-Nigerians have at the tip of your finger every information related to land acquisition, land procurement, documentation, getting your properties registered, and obtaining your planning permit. In this video, I'll be speaking with the number one and number two of the Nigerian Institute of Architects, Lagos State Chapter. I mean Architect David Majekodunmi. He's the chairman of the Nigerian Institute of Architects, Lagos State Chapter, and Architect Abiodun Fatui. He's the vice chairman of the Nigerian Institute of Architects, Lagos State Chapter. It's good to have you, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. So, with minimal consent from the government, so to say, how is the architects and other professionals in the built environment, how are you collaborating to work together, and how has that reduced the incidence of building collapse in Nigeria generally?
Thank you very much. Dated back as 2008, I must give the kudos to Lagos State because the professional bodies in the construction industry are more relevant, and I can authoritatively tell you that we're working together, even both in the public sector and in the private sector, because there's so much synergy between us where we communicate. It's not just attending seminars, but you find out that even for the government doing something, they always get the private sectors involved, where we have a talk, brainstorming. Like one of the good things I think Lagos State has embarked on lately is looking into green architecture, looking at eco. How will I put it?
Environmental?
Ecological, environment. I think everyone is thinking green, which is well practiced in the global world today. And they've involved all the professionals, having all this webinar talking about how do we find solution, how do we reduce the emission. And I think that's the best way to start. So there's that synergy between the professional bodies, and it's clearly stated not only in the regulation. Maybe we'll talk about the National Building Code later.
Yes.
The National Building Code clearly stated the roles of every professional in the built environment.
So when a building collapse happens, a building collapse incident happens, people lose lives and properties. How are the people who turn up as victims of this collapse, do they get compensated at all, or do they get help in any form?
So building collapse happens as a result of negligence for some causes. That's what in our last meeting we spoke about, the architect's insurance. And if they have such covers, like maybe if they have life insurance or depending on where they're working. But when you say compensation, I'm not sure you will compensate somebody for not doing his job properly.
I'm talking of the victims now, the
Most
families.
Can I comment on that now? It's all recommended to the government. But if the government has done the needful, we won't be asking the question, the victim, will they become compensated? Ideally, it's all stated. It's in the book, but it's following it to the last dot. You as a client, you as a contractor, you must have all risk insurance. What does all risk insurance stand for? In case there are accidents. So for every worker on the site must be protected. That all risk insurance takes care of that. Also, your professional indemnity insurance, or what we can call professional liability insurance. Because due to negligence, your insurance should be able to cover what the damage you brought through your negligence. But ordinarily, between you and I, if we go outside there now, we want to get a car insurance. Instead of you doing a comprehensive insurance for a car that you bought worth 5 million naira. They said the comprehensive insurance is 500,000. I said, where will I get the funds? So you go third party insurance or third party fire and theft. So it's more to do with the enforcement. Now, at the submission or at the approval stage, moving to site, part of the requirement or the government must see is all risk insurance. Now, I talk about the accredited checkers, accredited or third party certifier. Now, a good example, the three of us. I'm the one that designed your house. The government hasn't got the manpower to, but you can now ask architect, building factory to be the accredited checker. But architect, building factory must have that professional indemnity insurance or professional, because it's taking a lot of risk, and his insurance must be able to cover the cost of your. So do you see where everyone needs to be compensated. Even you have ordinary accidents in the office, whether you sleep down, I mean, all this are taken care of. You have it's stated in the law, but there's no enforcement.
Which is a big problem.
Yes. And it's good we're having this awareness.
So if you're to explain to our viewers in layman's language, what is required to put up a building that has an architect on it?
Okay, putting up a building.
In relation to the role of an architect now, what does it require to put up a building?
Okay, so first of all, the client must have done some things. He must have gotten his land documents properly. He must have a fair idea of what he wants, and then he will engage an architect and give him what we call the design brief. No, sorry, the client brief.
Is that
the client brief?
A client must have an idea of what he wants. What if I don't know what I want? I just have a piece of land and I want a building on it. Is there something? Can you design something? Like
yes, sure. So like the chairman had said earlier, we would go and look at what the building regulations of that area, allows for, and then we would sit down with the client and see if he has a budget, to see how we can design to suit his budget, and as well meet up with what the government is saying we can do, or what the regulations will allow us to do. So we'll listen to his thoughts and see how best we can creatively achieve whatever vision we can get from him. Like I said, so as I was saying, once you get the client brief, we'll go back and interpret it vis-a-vis the government regulations and available land space, and then we'll come back with our own design brief. So that design brief is what like the chairman says, hey, this area is cut out for commercial activities. He wants to build residences. That's what's it. So we say, we can't do that because the government doesn't build houses here.
What if he insists?
He can't insist because the law is the law.
Yes. What if he insists? There's a way around it.
Okay.
And the way around it is to apply for change of use. You see, the law accommodates change of use, but you must be able to back it up with enough evidence. Now, let's give an example. Now, I see so many porches of, I don't want to mention the name of the church, but it says for every mile you go, there must be that branch there. And at the same time, there's a need for other things in that area. Now, for them to have built that church, they must have gotten approval. So, one, they've applied for change of use. Also, when there are needs to the community, you see the government acquire lands for what? For public use. So when you see that, okay, we need a school here, because the next school within this vicinity is 10 miles away. I mean, things like that, you can make a case. Are you with me? So there can be an application for change of use, and when that is granted, we can do it. But in some cases, no. Now, talking about, also just to buttress on what you asking, what does it require, you know, in a layman's view, apart from getting your land documents perfected, the first point of call should be the government table, that is the Fiscal Planning Permit Authority, which he said, yes, even if you don't have a brief, he makes up the brief, but he goes to confirm at the Fiscal Planning Authority to say, oh, we're building 4 family dwelling units here. Well, are we going to get the permit? I practice in England, and that's the way it's done. Even in my practice, we still do adopt that stuff. So from there, you will have been able to know that, yes, you can only do a block of 4 flats here. You can't do a block of 16 flats. You understand? Then other professionals has to be involved. Make your clients realize you need to test the soil. You understand? And after that, that's where you know what kind of structure you put. Then also, what is also missing, which is in the book, is all in the law. When you make an application for approval, it's supposed to be publicized in the newspaper, a well-read newspaper. Your community is supposed to know. I'll give a good example. There's a Nigerian church in England that applied to build this church in Dagenham. And at the end of the day, the community alone put up a petition, not a petition, but they carried them along to say, we are going to have this church in. And the community said, this will disturb the traffic. And at the end of the day, the church was given a temporary approval for 2 years, pending the time when it finds a suitable place. And with the condition of that approval for 2 years is that, yes, you can have this church here because it's your land and it's been earmarked for church. But we never thought this would be highly residential in future. But since that is highly residential and we've carried the community along, we shall not allow any parking or any whatever in this church. All you can allow is 10 shuttle. So you find out that the government provides maybe 10 miles away a parking for 500 or is one of these big churches in Nigeria. For 500 cars, and you take the shuttle. So it's only the shuttle you see in front of the church, which reduce the traffic, reduce the parking. And maybe, I think 2 years or thereabout, this church find a suitable place that the law allows it to do everything. So that's another thing that is missing. We have it. We are taught in school.
A lot of things missing, actually.
It's negligence.
So that leads us to the National Building Code you mentioned earlier. What is it about, and what role does it play in the built environment? How does it help professionals to do their work?
Thank you very much. The National Building Code, all it's all about, it gives the minimal requirement for materials to be used, for the labor, for the workmanship, and the standard, the quality. And I'll still repeat, because each time they ask me this question, not that I get angry, but it's sad. And let me give you a little history of the National Building Code. The National Building Code is prepared by the professionals in the built environment. For Nigeria, the National Building Code has been prepared since 1986. 20 years after Dr. Mimiko was the minister, he signed the National Building Code. That's 20 years after. What year are we now? 2022. How many years after?
16 years after.
16 years, 16 plus 20.
26.
As I'm talking to you, there is no enabling law to enforce this National Building Code. And at this stage, we are all advocating for domestication of the National Building Code. Let me now expatiate on the domestication. see, domestication of the National Building Code will kind of more to do with Ikorodu compared to Victoria Island, compared to Ikeja, because the local climate in Victoria Island is different to that of Ikorodu. Even the soil in Ipakodu is different to the soil in Sabo. So that's when you domesticate the National Building Code. But don't you think it's pathetic? Don't you think it's sad? And what does our National Assembly do? When the other building collapse happened in Ikorodu the other day, that was when we heard that the National Assembly is having the first reading or the second reading of the National Building Code. Is it until when lives are lost or when the family of the government or whatever is there is involved that will now wake up? It's so sad. So that's what the National Building Code says. And not only that, it gives the duty of every professional in the built environment is well clearly stated.
How relevant is it particularly to building collapse?
It is because number one, it talks about the quality, it talks about the workmanship. Let me give you a good example. Now, if the material used are texted, that is, it met the requirement, because that National Building Code says what the strength of the concrete will be. Now, it tells you what the quality, the material of the door you're using will be. Now, we get fire hazard. And ideally, God forbid, if fire happens here, at least this room is supposed to be protected maybe for half an hour or an hour. And what will protect it is the material used. So your doors must be fire rated, your windows must be fire rated, all the elements ceiling must be fire rated. All these are clearly stated in the National Building Code. So if you adhere to that National Building Code, God forbid, don't you think we would have been able to evacuate someone? I mean, there's an incident that happens in England some few years ago about the material used for the cladding. But the casualty was minimized. Also, maybe a good example in UK or, you find out that quite a number of, if you travel abroad, you find out in most of the houses you see wooden floor. There is a reason for it. Now, and the lesson was learned during the London fire, I think in the early 40s or so. Now, where you have a slab, a concrete slab, it's heavier than having a wooden floor. When building collapse, the weight of that, everything caves in. But when that happened, when the fire incident, when it was collapsing, everything shit out because of the light materials, the wooden. You see, all these are clearly stated in the National Building Code. The size of the reinforcement you use, if you want to use a wooden floor, the size of the wooden floor, how will you protect this wood against fire? Fire rated is clearly stated. For you to have this board or whatever, you must have, a certain thickness of insulating or fire insulating material in this element you have created. We have a long way to go.
Yes, we
but
do.
It's sad because we go to school, we learn all this in schools, but to enforce it. And a lot of our politicians or those in power, even where they're not trained abroad, quite a number of them in their course of job, they've been sent abroad. But when they go abroad, maybe it's another thing they go to look at. Because I can authoritatively tell you, I'm part of, and I'm aware there was a time, at least we call them 100 of us, about 100 of staff of the development control in Lagos State were sent abroad to Singapore to see how they enforce the law. But unfortunately, when they get back, maybe 6 months to their retirement or 1 year to their retirement, and we should have taken the younger ones who are still going to be in the service, maybe for 5 or another 10 years. But quite a number of those who went on that trip, maybe retired within 2 years.
Thank you too for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button below and like this video, share with friends and family. Also head on to our Facebook page and Instagram, follow at Cable Plus Property. My name is Oiza and I'll see you next time.